Hello?
Hello.
Oh, good. I was just testing my mic, making sure everybody could hear me. Thank you.
You're loud and clear. Thanks, Kevin. Okay,
Are we live?
you're unmuted. Yes.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jackson Fox of Fast Planning. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Fast Planning Technical Committee meeting. It is Wednesday, January 4th, 2023, and it is 12:01 p.m. I'm going to begin with, for the record here, the members of the technical committee that I see present. So with us today, I see that we have Judy Chapman, Nick Zarnecki, Kate Duber, Kevin McKinley, Tim Zinza sitting in for Bob Pristash, Lieutenant Mike Roberts, Sarah Shocker, Kellen Spillman, Jacob Toyrick, Danny Wallace, and John Weinberger. For technical committee members that I do not see present at this time, that includes Justin Burgess, Michelle Denton, and RJ Stump. So Michelle and
Sorry, that was me. Go ahead.
Justin, RJ, Michelle, if you are in the meeting, can you let us know you're here?
Hey, Jackson, this is Michelle. I'm here.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Sorry, I just missed you. Okay. For fast planning staff members, we have with us today myself, Jackson Fox, Olivia Lunsford, and Corey DiRotigliano. And then for guests and other attendees, I see we have with us Don Galligan, Randy Bailey, Jack Barnwell, Peter Stern, Megan Flory, and Tricia Lavasier, I think is the way the last name is pronounced. Are there any other members or guests in attendance today that I did not list off by name? If so, go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name for the record. Okay, not hearing anybody. Okay, so that's what we have with us today. Let's move on to approval of the January 4th, 2023 meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Michelle. Move to approve.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second?
Bill Rogers, second.
Thank you, Bill. All right, any changes to today's agenda? All right, hearing none, anyone opposed to approval of the January 4th, 2023 meeting agenda as presented? Hearing no one opposed, we'll consider it approved. That takes us to approval of December 7th, 2022 meeting minutes, as are found on pages 2 through 5 of the packet. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
This is Michelle. Move to approve.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Sarah Shocker. All right, any edits to the minutes? I'm not hearing any edits. So is there anyone opposed to approval of the December 7th, 2022 meeting minutes as presented?
Motion to
Hearing none.
approve. Well, oh, sorry.
Oh, we already got it, Kevin. Michelle did the motion to approve and Sarah did the second. So we're just seeing if anyone is opposed to approval of the minutes at this time. From hearing none, we'll consider those approved. So that takes us to committee and working group reports, which is on page 6 and 7 in your packet. I just have one short update here from our last policy board meeting, which was held on December 21st. 3 items of note here. First one of which is the policy board did approve the revised project scoring criteria for the congestion mitigation and air quality funds and the carbon reduction program funds. And there is an update on today's agenda for that new call for project nominations. Second, they did adopt the state of Alaska's pavement and bridge condition performance measure targets. And they also approved the fast planning 2023 meeting dates calendar with one change for August so that staff can attend the Alaska APA chapter meeting in Anchorage in August. So that meeting was just moved one week later. And the final approved meeting calendar for 2023 is included on page 7 in the packet. Are there any questions for those 3 minor updates? Yes, Kellen, go ahead.
One clarification. So the scoring criteria was not remanded back to us. It was approved by the policy committee. Is that correct?
It was approved, yeah, without revision.
Okay.
Tim, I see that you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. So to be clear, on today's meeting agenda on 7C talks about review of the revised scoring criteria and project nomination form. So the policy board has approved those reviews, is what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct. I am showcasing to you under 7C the final scoring criteria and new nomination form.
Which is the policy board accepted.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's what I would want to get clarification. Thank you.
You're welcome. I apologize for the confusing language on the agenda. All right, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and open up our public comment period. Are there any member of the public that wish to provide testimony today on anything not listed as an action item on the agenda? If so, go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom, or if you can't find that feature, just go ahead and unmute yourself and begin your testimony by stating your name. Okay, public comment going once. Going twice. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period and move on to old business item 7A, which is an action item today. This is the federal fiscal year 2023 through 2027 Transportation Improvement Program. And this begins on page 8 in your packet. So the technical committee is aware the public comment period for the draft Transportation Improvement Program document has closed. The public comment period was from November 20th through December 20th. On page 8, this shows you the one-page summary of the projects that are included for funding in this draft document. On this page here, this looks largely the same from when you saw it last month, with the exception of 2 changes which relate to each other. So looking at this page here, I want to make note that the Geist Road and Chenapump Road corridor study has been moved out in the funding plan from 23 out to 25. So it has been delayed 2 years. That was primarily at the request from DOT so that we can focus on the Airport Way Pegger Road intersection study first and then get to that study second. In making that move, however, we freed up $300,000 in this current federal fiscal year in 2023. So that additional $300,000 that was freed up was added to the FAST Improvement Program, which for this summer's construction, we're looking at Aztec Subdivision, the 2nd Avenue Dog Park, and College Road pedestrian crossing. So at this time, the amount of funding for that program for this coming summer has been raised from approximately 1.8 million up to 2.15 million. And the current estimate for those 3 project locations is 2.3 million. So it gets it closer to the DOT estimate to construct that full program this coming summer. Those are the only 2 changes that have occurred, which will show up on this sheet here. On the next page, page 9, this shows you that in the draft funding plan, we still have 3 illustrative projects at this time, which are projects that do not have any funding on them at this time, but they await funding. Should a project be delayed, we can insert one of these, or should FAST planning receive any additional federal funding, we could potentially initiate one of these projects. So these are the 3 illustrative projects that are moving forward in the draft funding plan. And then beginning on page 10, we've put together a short summary of the public comment received to date. I want to make note that on our interactive map online, we did have 109 individual comments, as well as we received 8 written comments that were sent to us either by the comment form online or directly via email. You can see the word cloud at the top, which kind of teases out the most used words in the comments that we received. So you can see that there the FAST Improvement Program was popular, as well as the College Road crosswalk. And this first pie chart here in the middle of the page just shows you for all of the projects that we had included on the interactive map, that in general, over 90% of the comments were in support of the projects that we had included in the funding plan, with a few folks that said that they did not support 2 projects, as well as 3 folks that said they didn't know if they supported or did not support that project. And then on pages 11 and 12, just a few more pie charts here to show you some of the comments or some of the projects that were most commented on. The project that received the most comments was the College Road Crosswalk. And as you can see on this pie chart here, 38 out of 38 people that provided comments were in support of that moving forward. Similarly, for the Pioneer Park North parking lot and boat launch, we received 7 clicks on that project, 100% in support of that. However, it's a small number of folks that make comments. And then on the next page, we have Holmes Road and Yankovich Miller Hill. Holmes Road had 5 clicks on that and all in support of that project. And then for Yankovich Miller Hill, we had 7 clicks in support and one commenter not in support of the project as currently scoped. Behind this summary here, we do have all of the individual comments summarized on the interactive map comments summarized on pages 13 through 19. And then, oh yes, go ahead,
I
Kate.
have a question about that. A lot of the comments seem to be in reference to different projects than what's listed there. Is that how they came through on the map, or is that just where it got a little bit off putting it in Excel?
Are you talking about the ones that are titled differently but referring to the same project? Like there are some College Road ones where people didn't go and click on the project polygon, but they knew the general vicinity of the project that they were wanting to comment on.
It just seems like a lot of them are, off, like the comment doesn't match the project name from what I can tell at least. It's pretty easy to figure out what they're talking about, but like I think there's Pioneer Park ones related to the Yankovich Miller Hill Road.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It is possible when we sorted these comments that we didn't line up all the fields.
I'm curious if that affects your, I don't suppose it would affect your,
I don't believe it. No, I don't
Affects at
believe
all,
it
but-
affects the pie charts that we made.
No.
But it looks
those
like
were just
perhaps the
on
last 2 projects, something got out of alignment there.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And we'll make sure that we get that fixed. The policy board meeting in 2 weeks. So again, the interactive map comments that we received are on pages 13 through 19. And then the written comments that we received begin on page 20. So we have again, these were sent to us either via email or the comment form online. And behind page 20 shows you the 2 letters that were asked to be included in today's meeting packet. One from the Fairbanks Paddlers in support of the Pioneer Park project, and then one from the Fairbanks Cycle Club, which highlights a variety of projects, non-motorized projects that they support in the draft funding plan. So in general here, with all the comments that we received, none of the comments resulted in any direct changes to the funding plan, since the majority of them were simply in support of the funding plan that was presented. But related to the first page of this meeting section here, beginning on page 24, this shows you the updated funding plan. Again, since the last time that you saw this funding plan, there have only been 2 changes, and one of which was delaying the Geist Chena Pump Road corridor study out 2 years from 23 to 25, and then utilizing those freed up funds in 23. Those were added to the FAST improvement program to bring the construction amount up from 1.8 million up to 2.15 million. And also beginning on page 31 in the packet, we have also added the informational tables to the funding plan, which shows you all the DOT funded projects within our metropolitan planning area. These were directly taken out of the latest version of the state's Transportation Improvement Program, or their STIP document. So these have been included in an informational table here in green on pages 31 through 33. And then on page 34, we have the informational table showing the Federal Transit Administration projects, which are predominantly projects being pursued by the Alaska Railroad. And then page 35 shows you the informational table for the Federal Transit Administration funded projects for the Fairbanks North Star Borough Max Transit System, which I'm still waiting on some numbers from Max Transit on entries here for each one of their projects. But these informational tables have been built. Again, this template here runs a 10-year timeline, so we can see projects that may be in design over the next 4 years when they will actually get to construction. But the final version of this document is included in the last half of this section, beginning on page 36. We have the accompanying narrative, which simply describes the development process for this funding plan, all of the different committee meetings in which this funding plan was discussed, the changes that were made, the projects that were nominated to this funding plan, how they scored, what our amendment and admin mod procedure is for adjusting this funding plan moving forward. But beginning on page 49, you'll see what the final format of this funding plan will look like. Again, that spreadsheet you looked at before was kind of a 10-year outlook, but in the final version of this plan, we're simply showing the years 2023 through 2027. And then all the funding that was in those beyond years is now tabulated into a single column. So again, this begins on page 49 and concludes on page 62. So I'll stop there for an introduction on the draft federal fiscal year 2023 through 27 transportation improvement program. This is an action item here today. Following the close of the public comment period, the action to be considered by the technical committee is a recommendation to the policy board on adoption of this final funding plan and or any amendments you would like to see to the funding plan before we bring it to the policy board. And so I'll open it up now for any questions. Yes, Kellen.
2 questions. Did you get a copy of the Cheater Riverfront Commission letter by chance?
I did. I believe it was just yesterday afternoon. Yes.
Sorry about that. They had a late meeting and late action on that. But for the record, there was a Cheater Riverfront Commission letter supporting the Pioneer Park boat launch.
And I will make sure that gets it into the policy board packet.
Okay, thank you. And one more question, if I may.
Yes.
There's 2 different tips in the meeting packet. The tips on page 23 and the tips on page 49 the same?
They're exactly the same, yes.
Okay.
I've just hidden the 2028 through 2032 columns.
Okay, thanks.
Tim, I see you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I see Cal Street reconstruction phase 1 listed, but phase 2 is nowhere to be seen. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, phase 2 is shown for funding. Let me get back to the 10-year plan. I'll reference a page number so Olivia can pull it up.
28.
Page 28.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's in 28 for construction. Okay.
Okay, Olivia, if you go to page 25. So Tim, as you'll see here on page 25 of the meeting packet, so phase 1 is scheduled for construction in 2025. And then phase 2, which is about 7.7 million, that is funded in 2028. So phase 2 would be 3 years later.
Oh, I see. So maybe we should say Cal Street reconstruction - phase 1 and phase 2. Maybe add that to the header or something.
Yes, I can do that, Tim, for everyone's
I
clarification.
see it down low too. Phase 2 will reconstruct. You actually do say it. I'm sorry. I was just cruising through the main headers, but that might help. At least
Okay. I'll look at the title and the description and make some modifications as necessary to make that more clear.
Hey, thank you. That's all I had.
All right, thank you, Tim. All right, any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions at this time, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up for public comment. Is there any member of the public that wishes to provide testimony today on the draft federal fiscal year 2023 through 2027 transportation improvement program? Peter Stern, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Jackson. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the FAST improvement program because I think it's a really important program. And unfortunately, in this TIP, there's no funding provided in 2027. And my understanding is that the money that had been there was moved over to the Black Hole Mini Street project instead. I've surveyed most of the separated paths in the FAST area, and many of them are in bad shape and need to have repairs done to them. And the project size is relatively small on all of them. And so FAST would like to bundle them together to find a large enough project that a contractor might want to bid on it. And so that threshold, I believe, is $1 million. So to have absolutely no money in 2027 is not a good situation. So I hope that in a future TIP, money can be found to make sure that that program gets funding, because about 20% of it apparently is supposed to be devoted to non-motorized path construction and repair. And DOT has no money to do repairs, so it's going to come down to the FAST planning improvement program to provide funding for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any technical committee members have questions for Peter? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you for your testimony. Any other members of the public wish to provide testimony today on the draft funding plan? All right, I'm not seeing any, so I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. So at this time, I am looking for a motion. Again, the task here today is a recommendation of the policy board on approval of this final funding plan. Also, there is opportunity for anyone to make a motion for any amendments to the funding plan prior to it going to the policy board later this month. So I'll open the floor for a motion at this time.
I'll move to recommend to the policy board to recommend approval for the draft 23 to 27 TIP.
All right, motion made by Sarah Shocker. Is there a second? Second. All right, second by Jacob Teuerich. All right, motion's on the table. Open discussion. Yeah, Kellen, go ahead.
I'll make one comment. I support this TIP. I think it's a great TIP. I think there's a lot of really good projects in here, a lot of well-needed projects. One thing I was a little disappointed in, particularly with it planned out, roughly planned out through 2032, is I don't see Barnett Street reconstruction anywhere in there. I think that's a really important project for this community. It was in the TIP for over 10 years, and we just didn't see a lot of progress on it. And looking at some of these projects, coming out to 2032, I really think Barnett's a big priority over some of these projects, but has a big price tag attached to it. So I'd really like some discussion, maybe at the policy board level, on a plan for Barnett. It seems like just turning our head to it, ignoring it for another 10 years isn't going to do this community any favors because it's so expensive. So I don't know if that takes a motion, but again, I support every project in here. I support the TIP. I just would really like a plan for Barnett Street. Maybe that's a conversation with the city, and maybe if the city wants to add anything to this conversation. I just see Barnett getting a lot worse in the next 10 years and it being even more expensive when we finally get to it.
Okay. Thank you, Kellen.
I have two things. If I
Yeah,
can
go
add
ahead,
on.
Sarah.
I will build on Kellen's comment that I agree. Lots of hard work from FAST to put this together. This is a lot of shuffling and shell games, and so great job to FAST planning staff on that. I'll reiterate what I've said before. I agree with Kellen. These are great projects, but I think it doesn't take a hard look at this to know that I think in 1, 2, 3 years, it's not gonna look like this. I think some costs are gonna go up. These urban projects, heavy utility projects are just ripe for a lot of increases and overruns that we just can't predict today. That kind of lines up a little bit with Barnett Street. I mean, I can't remember what we did the estimate for all of Lacey Street in total was like $25 million or something. And so I think we should keep Barnett on the radar. The other thing I think we should keep on the radar is really looking within our own agencies where we can to initiate some design work on some of these projects to position them better for grants or just have shelf-ready projects. Going back to Peter Stern's comment, I will also make a plug for the FAST Improvement Program because I think that has been our most consistently, reliably delivered program every year. It's not the real fancy, attractive, big improvements, but it's great preservation. All agencies get an equal share into it. And I think it's a great program that can take up a lot of funding if something big were to slip. And I guess all that to say, when I see Holmes Road, Minnie Street, Lacey Street, I mean, Lacey's in the out years, but we have some big projects coming up on our horizon where we're putting a lot of our eggs in one basket in 1 year for construction funding, and some of these are high-risk projects. So I think we should just keep our options open for other things that can plug those gaps. And so just want to quick shift back to the Pioneer Park boat launch project. There was a great article in the Newsminer today about that, discussed the Chain of River Commission's approval of it. And I just wanted to comment on a public comment I see in here. It was also in the Newsminer today, and I apologize, I can't see the page I'm on. Oh, page 20. There's a public comment basically suggesting this is not the most hydraulically ideal location for a boat launch. We will certainly look at that during design. So I wanted to reassure that. But the suggestion is to drop a boat launch. Number one, I'll go back to when Borough Parks and Rec was really pushing this project. The university boat launch was closed, and there was a pretty huge outcry in this community for the need for river access. And I don't think that we can have too many in this town. If you've been to Borough Park or Pegger or University when it's been open, they're packed full on a nice day in the summer. So I think a boat launch is a good idea. We had encouraged Borough Parks and Rec to include it in their proposal. It makes a great multi-use, just lots of recreational opportunities all in one stop there. So we'll do everything we can to make sure it's a good boat launch. And the alternative of finding a new launch location, I just don't see as practical, given that you need parking, you need access, you need all those other things. Those are some pretty big impacts associated. So I think improving an existing access where we can is ideal. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Any other questions or comments, discussion? All right, I'm not seeing any. Kellen, did you want to make any particular motion related to Barnett Street at this time?
Yeah, I think so. And I put something together. And it might just be a discussion at the policy committee level. I just, again, don't want it to fall off the radar. So I'll move to amend the main motion to approve the TIP, quote, with consideration on a long-range plan on how to fund the Barnett Street reconstruction project.
This is Michelle, I'll second.
All right, motion made by Kellen, seconded by Michelle. All right, Any further discussion on Barnett?
My only comment to that is it could just be a short discussion at the policy board level that we don't have a plan or it's not a priority anymore, but with this organization already putting so many resources into that project over, I think, at least since I was involved in 2010, it'd be good to have the discussion and see where it floats on the priority level, knowing it's an expensive project or even other funding opportunities associated with it.
Okay. Any other technical committee members have comments, questions, discussion on Barnett? Yep, Sarah, go ahead.
Comment I'd have to that. I think that's fine. I would support that motion, but it might be helpful if we steered that a little bit, because if the question is where does this fall on the priority, that suggests something else needs to be deprioritized. So is that the question we would be asking them to consider, or would we be putting forward other suggestions to try to get Barnett Street off the ground?
I could speak to that. I wasn't asking to prioritize. It was a long-range plan on how to fund it. So maybe that's after all of these years. Maybe it's a third-party funding. I'm not quite sure. And again, it could be a short conversation that there isn't a plan through 2032, which I think it'd be unfortunate, but that's kind of where we are, I think, with this tip and the money that's coming into this organization.
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendment?
So
yeah, go ahead,
I did want to just give the city a chance to respond. I know we're talking about one of their projects, so I see if they had anything to add to the discussion.
All right, Tim and Bill, any comments on Barnett?
This is Tim. No, I agree with Kellen. It shouldn't fall off the radar. I mean, Barnett's definitely a mess. I don't need to go down that road and describe all the issues with it, but I agree. It should be on the radar. It should be on the plan, on the schedule. So yeah, I'd like to say I agree with Kellen.
Okay, thank you, Tim. All right, I'm not seeing any further discussion, so let's go ahead and call the question on the amendment. Since we have folks on Zoom and in person, I'm going to go ahead and go through the roll call, and we'll start with Ms. Chapman.
Yes.
Mr. Zarnicki.
Yes.
Ms. Denton.
Yes.
Ms. Dubert.
Yes.
Mr. McKinley.
Yes.
Mr. Zinza.
Yes.
Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Lieutenant Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Shocker.
Yes.
Mr. Spillman.
Yes.
Mr. Toyer.
Yes.
Mr. Wallace.
I'm sorry, I'm in two meetings at the same time, so no issues here.
All right, thank you. Mr. Weinberger.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That amendment passes. We're back to the original motion as amended. Any further discussion on the recommendation of the policy board to approve the 2023 through 2027 transportation improvement program with the note about Barnett? All right, I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to go through roll call again here on the main motion as amended, starting with Ms. Chapman.
Yes.
Mr. Zarnicki.
Yes.
Ms. Denton.
Yes.
Ms. Dubert.
Yes.
Mr. McKinley.
Yes.
Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Lieutenant Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Shocker.
Yes.
Mr. Spillman.
Yes.
Mr. Toyer.
Yes.
Mr. Wallace.
Yes.
Mr. Weinberger.
Yes.
Mr. All right, thank you, Mr. Weinberger. All right.
Jackson.
Motion. Yes, Tim, go ahead.
Mr. Zinza says yes as well.
I apologize. Looks like I skipped over you. Well, thank you. All right, we have a complete vote there. So let's go ahead and move on to item 7B, underneath old business, the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. This is also an action item here today. We will be looking for a recommendation to the policy board on adoption of the final 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. So beginning on page 72 through 93, we have all of the comments that we received on this plan update to date. Again, the public comment period ran from November 20th to December 20th, 2022. I do want to thank both Don Galligan at the Borough and Randy Bailey at DOT for providing a very thorough review of the project list. We did present last month the comments and revisions that they had requested to the project list, and included in today's packet is the final revised project list. We also did receive a number of comments from the public, which are documented throughout this table here, again, pages 72 through 93. And we also have a column that shows you basically our comment response or what action was taken. There are just 3 comments on this that still need to be resolved by our consultant, Kittleson and Associates, all very minor in nature. The first comment that still needs to be resolved is on page 80 in relation to the FAST Improvement Program. We do need to show the FAST Improvement Program in all of the ranges of the project list, short, medium, long, and very long. I believe at this time it is left out of the short range, so we need to simply add that back in. And then on page, the comment summary here, towards the back. There were 2 other comments. Apologies, I'm looking for the specific page. Oh, page 88. Yeah, top of page 88. There are, in the needs assessment, which is an appendice to the plan update, there's discussion of bicycle and pedestrian needs in that assessment. And we received a couple comments from Peter Stern that we think would be good additions to that needs assessment. So anyways, there are 3 comments that still need to be addressed, which will result in very minor revisions to the document. But in general, all the comments have been resolved and corresponding updates have been made. And beginning on page 95 in the packet shows you the revised version of the main document for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update, including the revised or updated project list based on the comments that we received from the Borough and DOT, which begins on page 120 in the packet. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions on this final document, which is up for approval this month.
Hey, Jackson, this is Bill Rogers.
Go ahead, Bill.
I have just one comment on page 90. Comment number 136, the response was the Richardson Highway and Mitchell Expressway are the same roadway. Is that true?
Well, the Richardson and Mitchell and Parks Highway are technically all the same roadway. And I read through the description of the Kinross trucking plan that's included in the document. It doesn't specifically call out the Mitchell, but it does state that the preferred trucking route at this time is up the Richardson to Pegger Road, then up Pegger Road to the Johansson over to the Steese Highway. So I think that the description at this time is still accurate, even though technically the Richardson transitions into the Mitchell before you get to Pegger.
I haven't looked, but I think it even has a different project number, but okay. I was just wondering about that.
Right, any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. I'll go ahead and open this up for public comment at this time. right, I'm not seeing any members of the public at this time wanting to provide testimony. So I will go ahead and call for a motion. Again, the action item here to consider today is a recommendation of the policy board on adoption of the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update and or any amendments you would like to see to this updated document.
So this is Judy. I'll move to approve the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation update to the policy board for consideration.
Thank you, Judy. Is there a second?
This is Michelle, a second.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, discussion on the motion. Right, I'm not seeing anyone in the room or anybody online. So last call, any comments, questions, discussion on the updated 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan? All right, I'm not seeing anyone, so I'll go ahead and call a roll then. I'll start with Ms. Chapman.
Yes.
Mr. Zarnecki.
Yes.
Ms. Denton.
Yes.
Ms. Dubert.
Yes.
Mr. McKinley.
Yes.
Mr. Zinza.
Yes.
Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Lieutenant Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Shocker.
Yes.
Mr. Spillman.
Yes.
Mr. Toyer.
Yes.
Mr. Wallace. Come back to Mr. Wallace. Mr. Weinberger.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Last chance for Mr. Wallace. Might be paying attention to his other meeting there. All right. Regardless, the ayes have it. So we'll consider that motion approved and move on to item 7C underneath old business, the call for project nominations for congestion mitigation, air quality, and carbon reduction program funds. This begins on page 129 in your packet. So included on page 129, I have put together an overall schedule for this new call for project nominations for what we call CMAQ funding for the PM 2.5 non-attainment area and the new fast planning carbon reduction program. Again, the policy board last month did approve the revised project scoring criteria, and we have updated the project nomination form to match those scoring criteria. So there's opportunity for applicants to provide information for each individual scoring criteria as they apply for projects. On my schedule here, I do intend to open the call for project nominations on January 16th, which is technically Martin Luther King Day this month, but to run that for 30 days through February 17th. The reason I'm delaying it about 10 days is so that we can build a web page where we can share with you all and the public the final revised scoring criteria, the new nomination form, and the background information, which shows the eligibilities for these program funds. As soon as that call for project nominations is open the very next day on January 17th, we intend to hold an applicant workshop here at Fast Planning's office to showcase to all prospective applicants how much funding is available, again, what the project eligibilities are and what the process is for submitting applications to our office. The due date would be, again, February 17th for those applications. At the close of that call for project nominations, our next step would be to run all the projects through a project eligibility review through the Alaska Division Federal Highway Administration Office. And once that eligibility review is complete, all projects that are considered eligible for that funding, those projects will be advanced to the full technical committee for you to individually score those projects. Concurrently with technical committee members scoring those projects, we will have our third-party consultant, Trinity Consultants, perform emission reduction calculations for each of the projects that are scored so that we can input those values into the scoring form. So that helps us compare the projects for which ones will result in the greatest emission reductions. And so following technical committee member scoring and those emission reduction calculations, we internally at Fast Planning, our staff will develop a draft funding plan for the projects that have been nominated to us towards the end of March. And then we would be bringing forward a draft funding plan to the technical committee and policy board for approval in April, so that we can begin initiating some of those projects. And we are looking for a minimum of 3 years worth of projects, maximum of about 10 years worth of projects. So we are looking for agencies to, if you would like to submit multiple applications, we definitely encourage you to do so. Behind this tentative schedule page here on pages 130 and 131, this shows you the revised scoring criteria as adopted by the policy board last month. So this is what we will post online for you all to look at again. And then beginning on page 132, again, we have updated the project nomination form to match those criteria. So there are some new questions with yes, no answers and text boxes for you to input how your project meets those criteria. So the nomination form has been updated. We will make this an editable PDF form so that folks can just simply download the PDF and then enter in your text for each one of the questions. And then behind that nomination form is what we presented to you all last month, which shows you, beginning on page 142, shows you the information that we supplied previously, which we will update and expand for this project nomination opportunity, but simply showing that this is our second call for project nominations and that these project nominations focus on those that improve air quality. Page 143 has the funding sources. Again, there are two different funding sources. One are CMAQ funds, which are focused on contributing to reductions of PM2.5 emissions within the PM2.5 area. And then the second funding source is our new carbon reduction program, which focuses on reductions in carbon dioxide emissions and can only be spent within our metropolitan planning area boundary. Page 144 shows you a map of those two different boundary locations. And then pages 145 and 146 provide you the one-page summary of the eligible project types, which we will take these 2 pages and bolster those with a larger list of example projects that are eligible for these two different funding sources. But we are asking local governments to simply kind of focus on the idea of coming up with projects that would result in improvements to air quality. And we don't necessarily want to limit your innovations or ideas on what types of transportation projects could accomplish that effort. Once project nominations are received and scored, Fast Planning staff will come up with a funding plan to distribute those projects across the 2 different funding categories, which again is CMAQ funds and carbon reduction program funds. But Olivia, if you'll go back to the schedule on page 129, this was just an informational update to get you all prepared for this next call for project nominations. There's no action on this item here today, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or if technical committee members want to discuss this opportunity, that time would be now. Yeah, Kellen, go ahead.
Do you have a time for that workshop?
I do not have a time set yet for the January 17th workshop.
Okay, thanks.
It'll likely be a 2-hour workshop.
Okay.
And we will record it in webinar format for any folks that are not able to attend. They can listen to the content. We'll post it on our funding page website so that folks can download that later. Okay. If you are not able to make it. All right, other comments or questions or discussion?
And one more.
Go ahead, Cal.
Did we have any kind of projects in the hopper, any nominated projects from, I know it was a previous transportation bill for our air quality nominations that didn't get funded?
The only two groups of projects that have not yet been funded, one is purchase of compressed natural gas buses for Max Transit. That was delayed because Max Transit does have money at this time to purchase compressed natural gas buses. So once they run out of that money, we can provide money for that. So that's a standing nomination. The other group of projects that have not yet been funded are the gravel to pavement projects that were nominated that are technically eligible for this program, but predominantly reduce emissions of dust in the summertime and doesn't necessarily result in emission reductions in the wintertime when we have our air quality issues. So those ranked low, and we have not initiated those projects yet, though they are technically eligible.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So let's move on to our one and only item underneath new business, which is the draft 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Air Quality Conformity Analysis Status Update. There is no information included in your packet, but I did want to provide an update to you all. The draft air quality conformity analysis is slightly behind schedule with our consultant team that is working on this. As I understand, the MOVES modeling runs were complete as of December 22nd. The years that they picked to do model runs, to do conformity checks were 2022, 2024, 2028, and 2035. The first 3 years, 22, 24, and 28 coincide. Those analysis years coincide with the Kinross trucking plan. As it was impressed upon by staff as well as EPA division staff that they would like to see the modeling runs specific to the additional trucks on our roadway. Those modeling runs are done as indicated by our consultant team for each of the model years. They're all comfortably below the applicable PM 2.5 and NOx emission budgets. And they have a partial draft of this conformity analysis prepared that they are hoping to deliver to me by the end of the week. So without having that document in my hand, that's really all I can share at this time. But my hope is that by next week, that can be distributed. One thing as far as schedule, since we're behind schedule on this, is that once we have that draft analysis in our hands, we do have to release that for public comment. We also have to have an interagency consultation to work through that draft analysis document with the EPA, Federal Highways, and the Federal Transit Administration at the table. So we anticipate that occurring here this month in January, but likely we will not have that emission analysis approved until February, which will put us into a small lapse on our air quality conformity. At this time, we are supposed to have the air quality conformity analysis approved by the end of January, and that it looks at this time that that approval will come approximately 2 to 3 weeks late, which during that lap, my understanding is that we may not be able to make any new project obligations until that lapse has been resolved. So in any event, that's the update I have at this time. As soon as we do receive this document, we will get it out for public review, and we will schedule an interagency consultation, which will also be a meeting that is open to the public for those folks that wish to participate in that process. Does anybody have any questions on the draft air quality conformity analysis? Okay, Kelly, go ahead.
One question. So this model run is for all the new projects proposed in the 2045 FTP, correct?
It's correct. The full project list that's included in your packet here today.
And did it remove some of the older projects that were included in previous model runs, like the interchange at Steese and College Road?
Yes, it did. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody, but we will keep you updated on this item for next month. We'll go ahead and move on to informational items. We do have kind of one big update here with regard to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which begins on page 147. So on December 29th, the U.S. Census Bureau did publish the results of the 2020 census and the existing and new qualifying urban areas for the entire United States. This document here, as shown on the next page, page 148. Again, this notice provides the official list of areas that qualified as urban areas based on the results of the 2020 census. And as you can see on the bottom of page 150, you'll see Fairbanks listed here with regard to our population. Our previous urbanized area population was about 64,000. And so the number or the amount of population within our urban area has increased up to just over 71,000, but also our land area, our square miles, has increased up to 74.3 square miles, whereas our current urban area is approximately 55 square miles. So for Fairbanks, our urban area not only increased in population, but also drastically increased in size by about 20 square miles. And I'll show you that comparison here in a moment, but I also want to make note on page 151, the next page. Also, you'll see here that the Mat-Su area did become a qualifying urban area. They just barely made it over the threshold of 50,000 people. So their urban area is 53,000 at 57.6 square miles. But page 152 gives you the rundown of the previous census results from 2000 to 2010 and now 2020. As you can see on the top table there, for Fairbanks, the amount of population in our urban area has increased, and that directly correlates to an increase in our land area. So our urbanized area has grown by 26% according to the U.S. Census Bureau. We don't have a map yet showing where this has grown. We can predict that it's likely in the Chena Ridge area. Our hope was that it would grow in the Farmers Loop area since there's a lot of project needs up there, but likely it didn't meet the housing density in that area. So I expect some expansion, again, Chena Ridge, Chena Pump area, as well as potentially the North Pole area. But again, we don't have a map yet that correlate to these numbers. As you can see here for Anchorage, their population actually slightly decreased, even though their land area slightly increased. And then you can see that there is now a third urban area in the state of Alaska, which is the Mat-Su area near Wasilla and Palmer. And they just barely made it over the threshold at 53,000 people within an area that's smaller than our urban area. You have any questions, Sarah? Go ahead.
I do. I thought this is surprising to me because I thought it was a foregone conclusion Mat-Su area was going to far surpass Fairbanks area in size. Is that not expected, or what you expected?
That is not what I expected. I believe the model runs for the Mat-Su area, what they did in-house down there, predicted over 70,000 people in their urbanized area. The issue is that with the 2020 census, they abandoned their previous definition of counting population density. This urbanized area designation is now based on housing density. And so it's so many household units within a square mile. And apparently down in the Mat-Su area, they struggled with getting the housing density for the area that they had predicted. So, and so what we're seeing here on this table is that as we move forward and discuss a new population formula which splits federal funds between the Fairbanks and Mat-Su areas. We will likely get more federal funding than the Mat-Su area based on the numbers that you see on the screen here. So this is a positive note to us. But I do know that Mat-Su staff down there are also very excited that they actually made it across the threshold, but we were all surprised by the final numbers that came out. Yeah, Kellen, go ahead.
It's super complicated how the census does this. They make these quote unquote hops and jumps. And actually Fairbanks, we have one urbanized area, and then Eielson is what's referred to as an urban cluster. It's not counted in this. So my understanding is Mat-Su in that area got their urbanized area just barely in the 53,000 with Palmer and Mat-Su, and then have other quote unquote urban clusters on the outskirts. So they have one medium-sized blob and a couple small blobs. We have one big blob and one small blob, which is the Eielson cluster. But how they count this has huge ramifications with how money's distributed.
Are military bases included in that? Like Fort Wainwright and
Yeah, Fort Wainwright is counts into our urbanized area, but because there's such a distance between the North Pole area, quote unquote urbanized area, then there's a bunch of nothing, flood control project. Then you hit Eielson, that you can't make that jump because there's that area defined as rural in between.
Yep.
It's almost impossible to dissect how the census does this.
Yeah, we have heard from other MPOs across the US that try to predict what the urban area would be. And in large part, most folks were wrong. So it's something that we didn't, at Fast Planning, we didn't try to predict because we understood that it's very difficult to understand how the Census Bureau comes up with these boundaries.
And sorry to go down a rabbit hole, but does anyone have any insights on if was 2020 census response good? I mean, that feels right that Anchorage took a slight dip from everything you read. There's just nowhere to grow, but I kind of wonder if we got responses we otherwise wouldn't have if we weren't in a pandemic.
Okay, the borough formed a quote unquote complete count committee as part of this. And we brought in a complete count coordinator and had a census liaison as part of that. You never know for sure. We are not going to officially challenge these results like we did in 2000. We had an official challenge and actually proved the census department wrong. The numbers for the most part seem right. They're lining up with our address points, our expected population rates. They may be off by a little bit, but it's impossible really to say, as opposed to 2000, year 2000, when it was very, very far off, and we actually proved that with address data to the census department. One more thing. Yep. We did do a big exercise, fast planning, or it was FMATS at the time in the borough in 2010 to predict what the urbanized area would be. We performed this kind of prediction committee and put it all into GIS to predict that out and incorporated that into our boundary in 2010 as part of that process. But my guess is it's pretty far off compared to what actually came out of this. I'm surprised the land area is so large that came from this.
Yep. Well, and with that housing density, they assume so many people per household, which based on the nationwide numbers, we generally have less people per household than what the average is in the lower 48. So I think our population in our land area is probably a little bit overestimated then, but that's okay. I mean, the bottom line is that when we look at our population number compared to, another community in which we're competing for federal funds, we really came out ahead in this round. All right, and then the last page of the section, page 153, simply shows you the updated schedule for release of products from the 2020 census. We are hoping that later this month here in January, we actually see a map of our boundary in which they use to come up with those numbers. We likely won't have the cartographic boundary files until May, but we should have at least a shape file that we can put into GIS this month here, so that we can begin looking at what areas of our community have been expanded to. So
when will that take effect?
well, so once we receive our new boundary from the U.S. Census Bureau, we have to go through an exercise to adjust our boundary to what we foresee will be urbanized 20 years from now. And that's a lengthy process that will take likely 6 months or more to get through. And there'll be public open house events and a lot of public outreach and involvement. And we'll have to work in very close coordination with the borough's community planning department to try to make some of those predictions based on what they see for future land development and opportunities for new subdivisions to come up over time. So that's something that we will initiate maybe as early as February, but likely won't be wrapped up till close to the end of 23. All right, any other questions? Okay, not seeing any this time. So moving on to obligations and offsets, just begin on page 154. The only new obligation that we've seen over the past month is the additional funds that we approved for the design and utilities phase for Fifth Avenue reconstruction. So those obligations have been made so that the city and DOT can continue on their work on Fifth Avenue to get that to construction here this coming summer. And then as shown on page 156, we did receive one new offset with closure of the design phase for the Fast Intersection Improvement Program, which gave us an additional $100,000 in offsets. So our offset balance at this time is positive at roughly $75,000 for project increases. And page 157 has our project closures list, which has remained unchanged since the last time that you saw this. So any questions on obligations and offsets? All right, I'm not seeing any. We'll move on to committee member comments. Are there any committee member comments today?
I'll add one thing if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
To build on my previous discussion about the Pegger Road boat launch, I saw that Trisha and Kimberly were on the call. It was a really nice article in the Newswire today that I think highlights the importance of our agencies all working together towards all these projects. And Kellen bringing up Barnett Street made me think of that too. That I think we're all better together. And I mean that sincerely. And I just want to thank the borough for their kind words towards DOT and just look forward to working with all agencies on these projects.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other committee member comments? All right, I'm not seeing any. So that is the end of our agenda. I'm now looking for a motion to adjourn.
This is Michelle. Move to adjourn.
Thanks, Michelle. Second?
Second.
All right, I'm going to give that one to Kellen. All right, any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned at 1:10 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance and participation. We'll see you all next month.
Hey, thank you, Jackson. Have a good day, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
I saw my articles.